Hi everyone, welcome to the Beyond Deadlines podcast, where we tackle challenges that planning and schedule leaders come across on a day-to-day basis. My name's Greg Lawton, and I'm the CEO of an AI schedule management company called Nodes and Links.
My name is Micah, and I'm a planning and scheduling manager for Intel.
My name is Kevin Fuller, and I'm Industrial Solutions Leader for Alumnus Technologies.
Wonderful. Each podcast is designed to give you strategies and tactics that you can implement right away. And today, obviously, Kevin is in the hot seat. So Kevin, are you ready?
I am. Looking forward to it.
Beautiful. So your challenge today. You've been appointed as the Director of Planning Integration at a construction firm with a history of schedule delays that seem to be the product of poor baseline schedule development. Your job is to fix this. How do you do it?
Okay. Well, I think I need to start by gathering some background information
Mm-hmm.
about what the construction firm does. So are we talking owner GC or EPC sort of model? Where do we start from?
We're looking at, let's say GC, general GC in the E&R list. Let's do the most generic you could be.
Yeah, and do they primarily do integrated project delivery, or are they doing more of lump sum type of work, right?
Let's make it a little more challenging. They've got one business unit that mostly does one and one business unit that kind of does the other.
Okay.
Probably looking at different industries. A lot of people on the like listening to this will probably nod and go, yes, that's like my company.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think generally I like to think of like planning operating a little bit differently between the two different contract types, and what is the role of the scheduler. So I want to deep dive probably a little bit into both, right? Because I think that both have...
let's start with the first one. Let's start with one of them then. Let's say that this is integrated delivery.
Okay, perfect. And when they are building them out, are they using any sort of last planner, or they're planning their baseline schedule development? How are they doing that? Are they based off of the estimate? Or are they just sort of eyeballing from the beginning, saying, hey, I think this is maybe based on my gut, 3 weeks of concrete work, right?
Let's say that they're doing it from the bid. They've put together a reasonable bid, let's say level 3 or a level 4. They're doing it off historic norms, but let's say it's loosely historic norms, where some of it they have a spreadsheet for, and some of it is a little bit of eyeballing.
Okay, so it's like, they have done something typically similar in the past, and they just sort of rip and replace that baseline schedule and modify it just a little bit.
Yes.
So right there, I'd say is kind of problem number one, right? If you're just taking a program from someone else's work that they've done before, you probably don't understand every piece that goes into it, right? In my typical view of how I've dealt with schedules in the past, typically you don't just take a schedule and then go line by line and truly understand what's in it for many different reasons. The first thing that comes off, is just duration logic, right? If your duration is based off something that's calculated off something you don't understand, it's not going to be fully right, because you don't understand what's the input into that duration. And the second piece of that is soft preferential construction logic, right? It's sometimes hard to tell what is soft and what's hard based on just what are the resource ties or project specifics, especially in tools.
For the listeners, could you just define what soft construction logic is?
Yeah, of course. Anything that's preferential. So I like to think of, let's start by defining hard logic, because that's really easy. Hard logic is things that you can never get away from. So for example, gravity. You can never put a column in before your pile cap is in, right? Or you can never, start. There's always ways around certain types of workarounds, but generally that's the truth. Soft construction logic is things that are preferential in nature. So for example, if I am deciding to build from north to south because I think it's going to be more convenient for access, or potentially I know that I only have one crew available, so I'm only going to go do one concrete task at a time, right? That sort of having to predetermine the sequence because of that soft resource constraint that's flexible. I could bring a second concrete crew if I'd like, but that tie between that sequence is what I would consider soft construction logic.
Beautiful. So your first point was that if you're taking schedules that other people have made for other projects, the likelihood that you're going to fully understand the durations and the sequencing in that schedule is off, which means that if you're going to use it as a basis of estimate, you're probably going to have errors from day one.
I think that's definitely part one. The second piece of it, what's the role of the planner scheduler in your organization, right? Are you a forward-looking organization that elevates the role of the planner scheduler to be an execution strategist of sorts, or is it really just a reporting function that's used for your earned value management? Right.
Well, this is beyond deadlines, so all the companies who just use it for general reporting and have none of the strategic acceleration, delay and claims mitigation, and risk management should leave. So let's say it's a strategic GC.
Greg, I don't think they're dialing in to begin with, so we don't have to worry about that segment.
No, that's great. So it's the people who are forward thinking, they elevate the planning role, because I think that's one of the main problems that really faces the construction industry is we often build things without really having a cohesive plan of action that everyone really understands. It's not well communicated. It's based off poor inputs, and at the end of the day, that is sometimes the pitfall of projects. You're working against deadlines that someone sort of looked at a payment schedule and said we need to be done by this time, and try to back into it without really thinking of how to proactively execute against it. Mm-hmm. You're sort of stuck in that historical benchmarking life that everyone lives in to some degree. It's still, and not thinking about how to proactively go as fast as theoretically possible. And oftentimes this is because the tools that people have are just not set up to actually deliver that sort of delivery, right? Primavera, CPM scheduling, it's really time intensive. It can be very tedious if you are trying to figure out for the first time. And if you don't have that basis of skill and good culture surrounding and empowering the planner to help make best situation execution decisions in hand with the PM and project directors, they really can sort of fall down if you don't really know where you're at on your project at any given time. So I mean I think what it really comes down to is a lot of tools and capabilities surrounding them.
Yeah, let's talk about that transition a little bit, because in this hypothetical, you've been shoved in to improve that. So this group, this GC has nothing. We're very minimal, and you're going to try and change the game. Where do you start tactically? How do you start peeling this onion, and where do you go?
Yeah. So the first thing I'd do is really map the workflow. What is going on right now to try and really deeply understand the problem that we're facing, right? So I'd probably just sit and audit what's going on for a month, right? Sit in meetings, try and understand what's happening, map it all out. Because often when you talk my job is to deploy construction tools. Often when you talk to people, they don't even know how their own organization deals with problems, right? They have their list of tasks and they go do them, right? And I don't mean to sound flippant. I think people are trying their very hardest, but they're trying their very hardest to get their job done, right? And do it well at a high degree of standard. And they don't understand how it maybe ripples across and influences the rest of the organization and the impact that it might have. So I'd start by just auditing processes about what's going on, doing retrospectives of past projects, trying to figure out where those pitfalls lie. Once I do that, I probably want to shortlist what are cultural and organizational problems, right, that need to be overcome. And the second piece of that is what is actually a skill-based level that it needs to be either upskilled or technology could solve that problem, right? So that could be some sort of level of integrating some sort of new tool into the planning process. It could be making sure that all your schedulers are actually very well trained in Primavera P6 or Microsoft Project. It's crazy when you talk to a scheduler sometimes and they don't have they don't know how to resource load a schedule, or they don't know what type of constraint they're using on a certain type of activities, what the impact of that is on your CPM.
shout out to people who want to become construction planners or schedulers. It's not as hard as you think. There's lots of people out there who don't know what they're doing.
Yeah,
Kevin,
unfortunately.
before you go on there, I just want to probe and double click. This is beyond deadlines, what we do. So, one thing you haven't said to me that kind of shouts out is definitions and KPIs. So you've been set the task here of improving the schedule delay problem they have, which seems to be the product of poor baseline schedule development. I haven't heard yet you talk about what a KPI for schedule delay might be. You've talked about how you would investigate that poor baseline schedule development is the problem, but I'd really, if you can't measure it, it doesn't get done. So I'd be looking, what is the KPI that you're going to deliver? Hypothetically, let's say that I'm the CEO of this company. What's the KPI you're going to deliver to me? And what is the KPI you're going to show me that proves that poor baseline schedule development is the problem you need to fix?
Good question. I'm going to sort of toss away the typical like SPI, those sort of like typical KPIs that you might be delivering against every single project, and maybe look at a portfolio view first, right?
Okay.
One thing that I think is super interesting to think about is delay days in general, right? So how in every single monthly update, right? How many delay days are you reporting, and how much time has progressed over it? I think that's a really interesting metric that often will show you that you're just holding schedules, and all of a sudden you hit a 6-month delay, and you don't really have a good explanation as to exactly why, right? And that would show you that your process is either one, a poor baseline, or you're just misreporting progress and cutting ties in the back end to hold dates.
Exactly.
And that sort of metric right there is it's just an eye opener to show that your schedules aren't really being held accurate if that's what you're sort of planning and executing against, right? You're just sort of showing in this month you're getting a crazy amount of delay days.
Do you have a recommended percentage on that? They usually see 80, 90%.
Percent of delay days. Could you sort of
like if we turned it into a mathematical number, what would be your range that you're usually looking at? Whether it's, do you usually have 10-day delay days? Is it a percentage of delay days? How does that turn into an actual KPI number for people trying to execute that out on their jobs?
Yeah, that makes sense. I would like it to be 0. Right? I know that's probably not sort of always possible. I would say anything under 10 is probably okay, because things will change and come up on the project and they are overcomable. But if you have greater than 10, that's when you're 10%. I'm saying
10%. Yeah, okay.
That's when you're starting to maybe get into some things different that you're not fully understanding on your project if you can't explain it with like a delayed procurement of something, for example. And maybe where you're getting to the point where you need to start thinking about how to resequence to overcome these delays.
Got it. So for this hypothetical, I'm just going to throw one out there. I'm going to say that as the CEO of this company, I care about level 1 milestones because that drives my cash payment. And what I'm seeing is on average, across every project, level 1 milestones are 12% delayed. So it's above your 10%, they're 12%. So on my board slide, it's red. Hence, I've gone, Kevin, please become my savior. Save me from this red hell that I find myself in. Now, you're then going to go away, do your investigation, like you said, sit in on meetings, understand what's going on, etc. And then you're going to come to me and go, Greg, the reason why that is red is poor baseline schedule development. How are you going to prove that to me? Like, what are you going to show me that goes, this is your problem?
I'd probably look at how many, let's double click, because when you're talking about a level 1 payment schedule, right, there's a lot of detail behind that.
Yeah.
So I'd probably pull up that detail and do an as-built, as-planned retrospective on all my baseline dates versus my as-built, and just say, look how many variances there are here.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Just nothing's going to be the same. And I'd probably highlight anything that's over 2 weeks different, right? Because like there will be some active change along the project, but anything that's 2 weeks different or greater, which I'm sure there's a lot of that, just be like, look, your baseline wasn't built, to a degree of certainty that it should be, right? Look, it's just different when you actually go do it in the field.
So what you'd be showing me is probably the 5 components of schedule predictability. So you'd be showing me that scope doesn't match up. So people miss scope or change scope or something that isn't correlated with a change proposal. You'd be showing me that durations just do not match up. Aggregate, standard deviation, mean, whatever you want to measure. Probably a large amount of uncertainty in duration. Probably changes to relationships over time. And if you showed, to be honest, the golden one for me is if you showed me a calendar structure that wasn't actually in anybody's HR plan. So, we think we're going to work 6 days a week and people are only working Monday to Friday. I'd be like, what the is going on in that project? So let's say you've shown me all this evidence and I've gone, right, Kevin, spot on. Poor baseline schedule development. How do we fix it? What would you say?
Yeah. So the first one's culture. I'd definitely be elevating the planners and schedulers to have more of a say at the table. I understand that in this situation we're talking about that, but they're in every single progress meeting. They're meeting with the PMs. The PMs are consulting them when making decisions to making sure that the decisions they're making are based off of the best possible prediction of what you're going to go do in the next 3 to 6 weeks, right? You're looking at more than just 3-week look aheads. You're looking at the whole monthly update, right? How does this decision impact what I'm going to do in the future? The second piece, I'd probably look at bringing in some new tools, right? CPM and Primavera are, they've got their problems, right? Like you said, you could just rip and replace an old project into your baseline and make a few changes, and all of a sudden it looks very different, but you don't fully understand what's in. So I'd find a way to build a baseline using a new pre-construction tool like Alice Technologies, which what it does is it helps bring in your schedule fragments that you can pull in from data from your estimate, whether it be quantities, labor hours to actually go perform, and then map that to your series of fragments that your company has built for scopes of work, right? A column's a column is a column. It's always going to be the same set of activities. So you pull in those estimates, then you map that to your baseline schedules, and you have then a fragment library that you can sort of build and custom build your baselines every single time based on your company approved set of fragments, and then have it be optimized in Alice by both putting in the hard logic that exists and then also having a tool to help preferentially and optimize that schedule on the preferential logic. And then so the tool draws the logic for you, and then you have your baseline.
So what happens? Let's say I've got 1,000 schedulers in my organization that they've all gone through some kind of P6 education. Let's hold our tongues on how good that education is. That I have to retrain everyone, don't I?
I don't think so. Right? I think a lot of times they're able to retrain themselves, right? The core functionalities of most schedule tools are based off the same theoretical principles, right? Things like network theory, understanding, how precedence ripples throughout an organization, milestones, what do you try to do, backwards passes, things of that nature. They're all very similar. What you need to make sure you're not doing is bringing in a tool that is so complicated that they can't use it in their existing workflow, right? You shouldn't be using in a tool that it adds more work on top of what they're actually doing, right? You should be able to plug and play and integrate into their existing workflow in a way that they don't need a significant amount of retraining that is a burden on you, whether that becomes they could do some sort of self-study course, whether it's via different schedule education vendors that exist in the world.
Got it. Let
And then
me. Sorry to stop you. Let me just flip to something else as well. And I'm going to be a little picky here. So, what if you came and present this to me, and let's say you go and Greg, by implementing culture and processes and these tools, I think I'm going to get your major KPI to X, and I'm like, amazing, cool. What if I turn around and went, well, what do you think about our bidding policy? Like, our bidding policy has been bid on anything that lives, as opposed to bid on things and repeat similar things. You talk about Fragnet. What if our bidding policy is all over the place? Are you able to come in and go, look, I actually think we should be focusing on jobs that are more like this because we have core competency in this area?
I think that you should definitely have a list of project types that you are very confident your organization can deliver on. And you should maybe put a little more effort into those bids to sharpen the pencil on them, because you have a higher degree of confidence of winning. And then because you're very good at that, you can actually eke out more margin because you're not having to go a learning curve every single time you're developing those bids, right? Or going to go execute, right? You've got a team that's really good at tunneling. They know how to tunnel. They know how to do it. They know how to go. They don't have to experience any sort of learning curve getting started. They just go and they execute, and they do that with some degree of excellence. I do think that you shouldn't necessarily disqualify everything else from your bidding repertoire if you have the bandwidth, right? So I guess my answer is focus on what you're good at, and then expand into other items as you have the ability to actually go explore those options. And you can do that by, at alumnus we call it a digital rehearsal, because the idea of a fragnet, it's pretty applicable across many different projects. What you're doing is you're breaking down your project into fundamental units of work that are the same. Excavation is always excavation, right? Erecting steel is always erecting steel. Now, how you build that into how you execute might be a little different if you have a linear project, right? That's a different process and implementation. But when you're bolting something up, then you can program that. That's a constraint that's programmable, right? So that core functional unit is the same. You can build up that repertoire and let tools help you do a digital rehearsal and simulate how you're going to build to have a high degree of confidence about the bid number you're going to present, right? Simulate in a hypothetical computer world based on the information that's highly programmable and not unique to what you're building, to then determine if you have a high confidence whether or not you want to submit a bid on something.
Yeah, that I mean, that makes quite a bit of sense to me. And I've sat through so many bid RFPs where, I mean, I think what we're talking about now is something that would be far more advanced than what I typically see, where you get the bid back and it's in level 1 schedule. They've just done a backwards pass, from the schedule. Here's your L1s. Do you see a potential advantage for GCs if they go in and they essentially are just attacking the planning fallacy head on, and they're using reference class forecasting and they're using the segmentation effect? Do you see that as a potential? When we're talking about projects, you can say, listen, we have a recipe book that's like 80%, I don't know, some sort of number, where they come in and be able to actually show, we actually have this schedule pretty much built out if you just give us some of the extra details. I mean, do you see that as a potential point of leverage for GCs in the future? Having that data, because most don't have their data structured to go do that sort of thing. I mean, do you see that as a potential?
100%. I really do. I'll tell you this. I've worked on a project recently where we, stage gate process in an EPC world. So front end loading, if you're not familiar with it. At this point, they would typically have level 1, level 2 schedule, maybe, built out in Excel. And within 3 days, they were able to utilize this and get a level 3 schedule for a $1 billion project. And they were able to, work hand in hand with an owner to use that as a level of demonstration of we understand this more than we did prior to, leading into the schedule problem, right? They're essentially saying like, look, we've used this to understand what is actually going to happen here, and they didn't consider that spatial constraints were going to be as big of a problem as they thought. So workforce density, things like, oh, I can't put more than one person per 100 square feet, when typically they try and do one person per 300 square feet for safety reasons. They just like those were the insights that they were able to lean into, and the owner was very impressed that they were talking about something as nuanced as a work density constraint when they are putting forth a bid, right, and coming up with a baseline idea, right? I do think that's a point of leverage that GCs can use to win work.
Let me ask one final, and now I'm going to push all the way to the future. So let's say that the my KPI is back in the green. Not only that, is customers are saying, this is really cool, and giving me more money and more bids. So I'm like, okay, this is cool. I come to you and I say, all of this data and AI, it's some interesting stuff. How many people can I fire? So I'm looking and saying, can this automate people away? You've fragmented everything. You've boiled the kitchen down to the cookbook. Can I not just start getting rid of the chefs?
No, you can't. That's kind of the beauty of it. What this tools like AI and things like that in this construction world, they're really more intelligence augmentation. They're just making people much more effective, right? If you think of the problems that the people currently in the field are facing, it is this monumental task of trying to keep things straight in your head, making decisions. Tools like Alice are not meant to replace people. They're meant to make it so you can make a decision more effectively and better with data, right? Alice is an vending machine, right? You can't just say, build me a semiconductor fabrication facility. You have to tell it how it's built, right? It's not going to just give you an answer based off of an input that is. You need to have that real world judgment, the ability to make smart decisions, make judgment calls, because like anything else, sometimes AI hallucinates, and you need to know, hey, that's not a good option. So I don't think it's going to replace people. I think it's going to elevate the planning and scheduling world I like to call them execution strategists, or we at Alice like to call them execution strategists, who help assist PMs, PDs make decisions and increase margin on projects. That's really where we see our core.
Got it.
Well, I'm gonna go change my title immediately. I don't want to be a planning and scheduler anymore. I'm an execution strategist.
Do you know what, as well, Micah, I was just thinking to last week's podcast. I think that I think Kevin's on about $11,000 to charity right now. So I'm going to say thank you to Kevin for that. He's gone white in the face. He's like, what?
We talked about AI last week, and I had Greg hold his tongue on nodes and links. So he didn't say it every week or every sentence. And I said he owes about $1,000 per mention. So yeah, I think, let me know what your charity is and put up the big check, with the number on it. And I'm sure we can get that going.
Beautiful. So Kevin, we're about to wrap up. Any final thoughts do you want people to take away from this?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the planning and scheduling problem is real. I think it's a challenge that the industry faces. And I think that there's a collective group of people trying to tackle this, and I think there's not like a one shoe fits all type of solution. It's very much a practice, try different things, break things, see what works, do it again. I think it's got to be a lot of different. It's not just a GC problem. It's not just an owner problem. It's definitely a partner problem as well. Consultants need to sort of do their fair share as well to bring good solutions to customers. on both the owner and GC side. I think and the services side, it's a procurement problem. I think it's a problem that everyone has to solve together. And I think it's also a problem that will help make the industry a little less litigious as well. So,
and then anyone interested in trying Alice, learning about Alice, we'll put some links in the show notes, but is there any good places to head outside of the website to learn more about your software?
Yeah, I mean, alicetechnologies.com is always a great place to start. You can contact us through our website there. That being said, always feel free to shoot me an email, kevin@alicetechnologies.com. Can't promise I'll get back to it right away, but I'll get there eventually and put you in touch with the right person.
I can't wait for our thousands of fans to just fill up your inbox with love messages.
There's worse problems to have.
For anyone listening to this on Spotify or Apple, I can confirm that Kevin has an incredible mustache.
Worth emailing and asking for a pic for.
Yeah, exactly. It's Movember now, but this is a pre-Movember stash.
That 1 month of the year where it becomes acceptable again.
Beautiful. Right. Well, with that, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Of course, if you've enjoyed it, please share it with someone who you think might enjoy it too. Micah and I just do this for the fun of it. And one of our fixes that we get is every Sunday seeing how many of you have decided to listen to us. It's one of our little social media buzzes. So if you can help us with that, that would be amazing. Other than that, I hope you've had a fantastic time listening to this, and we'll see you all next time.